oftentimes find themselves just going around and around the same bad mess. Sometimes, we'll hear this, the names change, the faces change, the people change, the job changes, the companion changes. Have you ever met somebody that they could change their relationship, their man, their woman, they could change their job, but everywhere they go, they find the exact same problem? Now, I'm not trying to offend you. Then they say something like, why is the whole world against me? They don't realize that until they deal with them, that it's not somebody else. That until they deal with the inner person of themselves, until they deal with who they are, they will never be free and able to move on. So Moses was running. Now think about this. Moses was this man, great man. You know the story. Moses was spared by God, by the Pharaoh who was looking to kill all the born of Israel, and God miraculously allowed Moses to end up in Pharaoh's house, and he was raised as a king's son. And now all of a sudden here is Moses on the run, and I could hear people saying, Moses, this is what your life is going to be. Moses was in Midian, and Midian was the poorest, most terrible region of the society of that time. And people were looking and said, Moses, is this what your life is going to be? A poor shepherd man, can't even find flock to tend through, just running and running and running. And God says, you know what, Moses, that's not what I've called you to do. And so God went after Moses. And God went after Moses in a way that Moses would not be able to deny that he had an encounter with God. Because Moses, number 2, realized something. Anybody realize this? God can change us. Here's the point. That His presence can do in a minute what we couldn't do for ourselves in a lifetime. Have you ever realized that? His presence can do for us in a minute. Anybody ever had that happen? In a minute. I'm not saying all your problems will be solved in a minute, but I'm saying His presence can find us in a minute what we couldn't do for ourselves in a lifetime. And Moses ran in Midian. He ran all over the wilderness. But God found him. Because God had a plan for his life. And God chased him down and ran him down and found him. And here's what happened in the 3rd chapter of Exodus. This is the life and story of Moses, talking about when God changes us. And Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, and the priest of the Midian. And he led the flock back to the desert, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Consider this. Moses is on the run, and all of a sudden, God, let me say this, God will show up, and He will speak through anything and any person and any situation. I found this about God, that God, if He can't speak to you through a pastor, He'll speak to you through some way, even if it has to be a burning bush. And one time, God even spoke through a donkey. Because God understands that we perceive things different, that we are all people and we have different perceptions. So here's what we realize, and here's what we found out. And Moses, God shows up to this burning bush, and He starts speaking to Moses. And here's what He said in verse 3. And Moses said, I will turn around. And I turned aside and seen this great sight when the bush was not consumed. And the Lord saw that he turned aside, and he looked, and God called him from the midst of the bush. And He said, Moses, Moses. I remember, can you remember the day when God called that name? When He said in your own name, whoever it was, whatever source it was, it could have been a preacher, it could have been a TV person, it could have just been a card, or you could have picked up the Bible and God called your name, and everything changed the moment He called your name. He said, Moses, Moses, and He answered them a question. He said, Moses said, here am I. Now here's the interesting part. People said, I'm too hurt, I'm too broken, I'm too lost, I'm too much in pain, I've done too much of my life, I'm too old to get started with God. And consider this, when God found Moses, in Midian, in this camp of the bush, Moses was 80 years old. You're never too old, too messed up, too late to get a good start with God. Never are you too messed up to get a good start with God. And after this turning point, here's what happens.